Support for Headline Humboldt is made possible in part by viewers like you. Thank you.
Coming up next on Headline Humboldt, the Board of Supervisors takes steps to fix the sewage-related health risks at the long-running Yee Haw Commune near Trinidad. Also, the election is over, but is it really? We discuss the results and the ramifications with analyst and attorney Eric Kirk. Coming up now on Headline Humboldt. From the top of Humboldt Hill, this is Headline Humboldt. I'm James Falk. Thanks for joining us. I want to be sure to point out at the beginning of this that this is just my opinion, no one else's, but I'll share it with you. And please know that I don't think I'm smarter or know anything more than anybody else on the planet. I don't even know which pant leg to put on first in the morning. But it's not often that I find myself struggling for the appropriate words. Today, though, I certainly am. Firstly, it's a profound mystery to me how a majority of Americans would vote for Donald Trump after all the crime, corruption, and controversy we've witnessed these past 8 years. If such a list of actions doesn't disqualify someone for public office, nothing ever will. But they did. And the question I think we need to explore in the wake of his victory is how, and then what can we do to reinstill honor and cooperation among the two operative factions that rule this country. To grossly oversimplify, I believe that Trump's voters have become so jaded by social media and political correctness, they've decided virtually every objection to Trump is based on exaggeration, manipulation, and a social engineering project that they believe puts their way of life at risk. Most Trump voters are good people. They simply don't believe Trump is an existential risk to this country. They believe that the other half of the country is overreacting, push an agenda, and create a society of politically correct zombies who say just the right words in just the right order whenever a marginalized group is mentioned. They believe they harbor no ill will towards such populations and yet still find themselves and people like them called out as bigots. If that's happening to them, they figure, then that must be what's happening to Trump. Couple all these feelings with anger towards a society that has left large portions of this group behind, and we get Trump's re-election. So what do we do? Given the anger and frustration many people are feeling and the fear, it seems counterintuitive to say, but what we need to do is forgive each other. Trump's voters are as American as anyone else, and we're going to be needing them over these next 4 years and longer to remember their own humanity and ours. To address such folks directly, you've won the election, and this is a democracy, so I accept that outcome. You likely believe that all the concerns from Democrats and their allies about the future of our country and its most vulnerable are overwrought. I ask that over the next 4 years, you watch what happens, weigh it against what was promised, and realize, above all, that Trump's doubters and detractors are not your enemy. We are fellow Americans, and we're worried that those binds won't be enough to overcome the enmity we're all feeling and the enjoyment some people seem to feel in belittling others' concerns. Prove us wrong. Trump is only a man. What we allow, what we ignore, and what we embrace is what will determine the moral future of this country. You've elected your president. Help make sure he's everyone's president. If we can agree to protect one another and universally accept that division and hatred have gone quite far enough, we may yet survive as a people. Joining us shortly to review the election and talk about these issues is our local attorney and political analyst, Eric Kirk. But first, the news. And the results, at least the early results, are in. These numbers represent the election as it stood during the final election night report, which included about half of the total vote. As a result, some of these numbers and even results may change. In the race for U.S. Senate in California, according to AP, California has chosen Adam Schiff over Steve Garvey, 57.3% to 42.7%. In the race for U.S. Congress, the 2nd Congressional District has overwhelmingly chosen incumbent Congressman Jared Huffman over Chris Colomb, 71.7% to 28.3%. In the race for State Assembly, Democrat Chris Rogers has won the district over Michael Greer, 66.1% to 33.9%. Jack Norton and Will Franklin faced off in the Humboldt Bay Harbor Recreation and Conservation District over Division 5. Franklin received 47.24% and Norton received 52.76%. Those results could change. The Eureka City Council had two competitive races this year, the 2nd and 4th wards. In the 2nd ward, Katie Moulton has so far received 59.27% to Kenny Carswell's 40.73%. In the 4th ward, Scott Bauer got 69.8% and Thavasak Simphenthong received 30.2%. In Arcata, the top three vote-getters win seats. Incumbents Stacey Atkins Salazar received 25.89%, Sarah Schaefer 23.03%, and Alexandra Stillman 19.03%. In Fortuna, the top two vote-getters will win seats, and those seem to be Jerry King, who's received 30.1%, and Tammy Trent, 36.99%. Measure F is the controversial ballot initiative sponsored by Security National and Rob Arkley to amend the general plan and force the saving of parking spaces that might otherwise get lost to affordable housing developments in downtown Eureka. It would also rezone Eureka City Schools' owned Jacob site. It has failed. Yes received only 31.75% and no took a whopping 68.25%. Measure M, an extension of a property tax for the Arcata Fire District that the district says is pivotal for its operations, passed with 72.03% to 27.97%. Measure O, a county-wide sales tax to help fund much deferred road maintenance and public transportation, appears to have passed or is at least in the lead with 61.86% voting in favor to 38.14% voting opposed. At this week's Board of Supervisors meeting, the long-running Yee Haw Commune off Quarry Road near Trinidad attracted the focus of county environmental health officials who fear the site is a significant health risk. Officials described in a report to the board how the proximity there between a hand-dug well and raw sewage on site, among other issues, necessitates government intervention. The commune is a 10-acre property that has been the home of roughly 33 people, give or take, for decades. The hearing on Tuesday before the board focused on concerns from Environmental Health Director Mario Kelson that the property now poses a significant and urgent risk to residents and public health more broadly, as well as the environment. He described loose pipe fittings that were leaking sewage, covered mounds of human waste held in drums, and a poorly maintained well, among other issues. The health code violations could impact the health of residents there, exposing them to pathogens and contaminants, while also endangering the entire local watershed, he said. In September, the county established a 39-week timeline for Garth to either bring his parcel up to code or face code enforcement's action. Tenants could ultimately get evicted and have their structures torn down. Site owner Charles Garth and his allies want the site declared an emergency shelter, which would allow it to stand due to the housing crisis. Public Health Officer Candy Stockton told the board that though the ongoing housing crisis makes it difficult for people to find homes, people still need to be protected. Garth, meanwhile, cited the property's long history as a community and said the board could merely issue him a permit to resolve the issue.
Like many people in Humboldt County, I carry many traditions and histories with me. And so one of those is the story my father used to tell me of the first house that he and his siblings grew up in. The house that my grandfather built with scavenged materials from leftover job sites that he worked on. And so I do carry that tradition in my family and see the value of it. And I also carry another tradition. I carry the traditions of our public health institutions, which really grew out of the movement in 1854 in London, when many people in the community were exposed to unsafe drinking water because of sewage contamination. That is the foundation of public health as we know it today. That there are some problems and some challenges that cannot be adequately faced by the individuals who are experiencing them, and it requires a community effort or oversight and participation by a larger committee to mitigate those risks. And so I'm not here to talk about people having a right to choose their living circumstances. They do. They also have a right to be protected from other people profiting off of the risk to them. And this is a property owner who is renting living spaces to individuals. And that environment is placing those individuals at an unsafe risk.
Could we talk about what we're looking for? Is the financial responsibilities moving forward? Are you going to clean up the messes that don't deserve medals bring in the porta potties, and address these issues going forward. Because if the next 5 years is going to be like the last 25, then we're wasting a lot of people's times. But there's going to be some financial effort on your part that has not really been made. You've gone and filed some paperwork, but you're going to have to jump up and say, yeah, I'm going to make this right, and I'm going to make this right in the next 34 weeks.
I'm all about making it right, but you need to step up and make it right too. I have a settlement agreement saying you guys are going to expedite my permits. Nobody else gets that. Our community has that. No one else has, and especially consideration with the county, signed contract to expedite our permits. I just found out today that my composting toilet permit's going to be denied. I didn't know that till now. The reason that septic was on the ground is I was waiting for them to stamp my permit so I could put it in my dispersal field. I got a bucket of it right now. I'm taking to go get tested. It's fine. It doesn't stink at all. It's got great. You would put it on your garden. I don't, right? You could. Lots of people do.
I don't. The board ultimately received the report from staff and directed them to continue its inspections and remediation efforts. We'll be right back with Eric Kirk after this short break.
It's almost here. KEET's travel auction featuring unforgettable destinations like Italy, Paris, and Scotland. Picture yourself exploring these dream locations with 4-star accommodations and your own personal travel specialist to handle every detail. With 3 years to take your trip, you can bid with confidence and support KEET's community programs. Visit keet.org/travel and find out how to register.
Life is complicated enough. Why worry about what to do with your extra car? Skip the costs of maintaining it, storing it, insuring it, or renewing registration. Car repairs? Forget about it. Here's one easy solution to your car problem. Donate it to our station. It's fast, free, tax deductible, and if you donate, you're going to feel incredible knowing you're supporting quality programming. Interested? Just call this toll-free number or donate online. Thank you.
Joining us now in studio is Eric Kirk, back again to discuss the election results and what it all means for you, the community, and everyone else. Welcome, Eric.
Thank you.
So that was a night, huh?
Yeah, it was a night.
It was a night, yes. Oh, what a night. Yeah, it was, I remember back to 2016 and the feeling I had that night when Hillary lost, and it was sort of a similar kind of thing because you didn't expect it and then it occurs and then you're just sort of left with the ramifications of all that might entail. But before we
I think I was better prepared for it this time than I was in 2016, but it was still devastating.
Yeah. Having gone through it before, you mean,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And you were live on Eric K-Mud.
That's right.
Yeah. So I mean, you had to think on your feet and know what to say, and people are freaking out. So, but we'll talk about the Trump victory and its associated ramifications. But first, we'll talk about the California ballot initiatives.
Sure.
So I've got a list here of things. It looks like roughly more than half are reporting, but things could still change. Is that right?
A couple of the measures were close the last time I looked that could possibly change.
Yeah.
I think all but 2 of them are pretty well decided.
Okay. And so Prop 36, which increases the penalties for certain theft and drug crimes and really sort of hammers home on shoplifting, right?
Passed in every single county, and I want to note that San Francisco, which is considered by many to be the most left-wing city in the country,
Yeah.
actually had a higher percentage of support for it, at least the last time I looked, than Mendocino County, Humboldt County,
Wow.
Sonoma County, because they are experiencing or have been experiencing some crime. They say that a conservative is a liberal who's been mugged. It's an old kind of joke. Well, there's a little bit of truth to it. It's overstated. But
Yeah. But I mean, people are living with the idea that all of our stores have become over-secured, and it's a lifestyle change. People don't like it, and the public safety officials all were very organized in presenting the argument that they needed this. So that probably helped. Now, the Prop 3 passed, which repeals the same-sex marriage ban language in the Constitution, correct?
Which is really important because Clarence Thomas and at least one other justice have hinted that once they overturn Roe v. Wade, that the equality of marriage decision could also be on the chopping block, which makes it really important for California to have passed that law, because at least then marriage equality will remain in effect in California.
Yeah, no matter what happens coming down the line with the conservative court or whatever else.
Exactly.
Okay, so then California Prop 4 authorizes bonds for water, wildfire, and land protection measures. That passed. California Prop 5 lowers the vote needed to approve bonds for housing. That seems to have passed at 56.3%.
Oh, okay.
But that's one that's pretty close.
Yeah.
California Prop 6 prohibits slavery and involuntary servitude, is what it says, but it's in jails and prisons, right? And that is close.
It is close, and it wasn't this close in Alabama. So we have a lot to think about here, but maybe the legacy of Alabama was a factor there.
Yeah.
But I think that we've just got this really backlash against crime, that even among liberals in California, and that may be a factor here.
Yeah, absolutely. And then let's see here, which other ones are important? The authorizes Prop 2 authorizes bonds for school facilities, 56.9.
Passing.
Yeah, that's passing. Yeah. So, any thoughts on the general run of the propositions and what surprised you, or?
No real surprises, except that Prop 34 is still close. That's the revenge initiative. I think a lot of people didn't understand what the history
Explain
was.
what that is again.
That was basically the landlord lobby is upset at this particular AIDS foundation because they are involving themselves in housing issues. They want them out of housing issues and focusing solely on healthcare issues. So it would force that organization and that organization only, because there's no other.
That's what you were saying last time, that
Yeah.
it only impacts one particular group, and that's still close.
Yeah, that's right. And they wouldn't be able to spend money on housing issues.
Yeah. So now one of the things that, moving on to sort of the national election, because I think that that's what people want to talk about these days. One of the things that was outstanding for a while was control of the House. Where do you think it seems like it's going to be to the Republicans?
Looks like it. I think that Nate Silver or somebody, 538, gives it about a 10% chance of the Democrats flipping. We are going to have a number of flips in Southern California, possibly. It goes back and forth. They're a really close election because there are some there, and there were a couple flips in New York. But it looks like the Republicans are going to flip Alaska, which was kind of a miracle that it happened last time anyway, and a couple of others. So it probably is, maybe the Democrats will gain a seat or two, maybe lose a seat or two, but it's pretty much looks like it's going to be status quo.
Yeah. One of the things that we were talking about before the break, which I think is really important, you're saying that at least this time Trump won the popular vote.
So far he's won the popular vote.
But your point there is not that
Yeah.
you're glad he won, but that at least it's a clear victory, right?
Well, it's just, it also, we don't have on the left this, we can abandon this thought that there is this invisible majority of people who would support progressive causes if they could just be encouraged to vote. Well, this was a high turnout vote. A lot of people who don't ordinarily vote came to vote, and they did not vote for the progressive side. It will force the left to acknowledge, or progressives and Democrats, to acknowledge that we've got a cultural issue here. I strongly recommend people read David Kurtz's column the day after the Morning Memo at Talking Points Memo. You can talkingpointsmemo.com. Because it says this: we have to stop thinking that there's a political solution to the fact that we've got a lot of people that either support authoritarianism in this country or are indifferent to it, or it's just not as big as an issue as the price of eggs, right?
Yeah, exactly right.
And so we need to have an education about the importance of checks and balances, the importance of traditions, the democratic traditions in this country, which are under threat. Now, I don't know what's going to happen, but we're all kind of hoping, because whenever I talk to people who voted for Trump, I hear them saying, well, he didn't really mean that, right?
Yeah.
When he talks about firing all the generals, the woke generals, and replacing them with loyalists, he doesn't really mean that.
And
it
all
was
the
just
civil servants,
hyperbole.
employees, and all of that.
Well, the Project 225 recommends firing 45,000 federal employees across the board and replacing them with loyalists.
Which is all the institutional knowledge that represents gone.
Everything, and it may not go through the courts because there are civil service protections protections that are over a century old that we passed during the Progressive Era, but then again, I don't know where the courts are going.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to me, like trying to anticipate, what's going to be unfolding quickly and what's not going to be unfolding at all. It's unclear how much he's going to be able to get done and how much his party will allow him to do if he has a unified government. I mean, we're hoping that on some things he has some restraints, but he may not. It's going to be interesting to watch.
Well,
and
he had
horrifying in some ways.
He had the unified government between 2016 and 2018. He lost it in 2018.
Yeah.
And
but he was, I would argue that he was shackled then by expectation and everything else.
Yeah.
And coming in now, he's got, a grudge with some folks, and so there may be more of a, urge to action.
Well, it was interesting that the House way back in from 2010 to 2016 passed like 55 repeal Obamacare bills, and then all of a sudden they had the total power to do it, and then they didn't do it.
Yeah.
Like, why? Well, they didn't want that because that'll cause a lot of chaos. Will they do it this time and not care about the chaos?
Yeah.
I don't know, because maybe he can just figure out declare martial law if there's chaos. He's also threatened to use the military, not just the National Guard, but the military to put down urban demonstrations.
And then, I mean, to me, the elephant in the room is this talk about a massive deportation project of all the illegals.
Yeah.
Something like 22 million or something?
Yeah, he's pledging to deport about half of them. And what is this even going to look like?
The logistics are just impossible.
We're getting, and will he do all that, or will he just do, first get rid of the quote-unquote cat-eating Haitians in Ohio, the quote-unquote gangs in Aurora, Colorado, which were highlighted in his complaint, but, will he actually go everywhere? We have quite a few undocumented immigrants in this county alone. Will they come up this far? And
what's Gavin Newsom's response going to be? I mean, Gavin Newsom's already called a special hearing of the legislature to Trump-proof California.
Right.
How effective do you think that could possibly be? And what do you expect him to do in the face of Trump's sentence?
Well, California was the center of the resistance last time around. It probably will be this time around. I'm actually more impressed with the fact that Attorney General Bonta has lawsuits practically drafted against Project 2025 and its implementation in case that it really does happen. And
because they were preparing even as the election was going on, just in case it happened.
Yeah, and so, California will be the resistance. California is like one of the biggest revenue supporting for the country. I mean, we put a lot more tax money into the national than we take out, than we receive the funds. It's and so it is going to be, and that's why I'm actually, the irony here is probably the political career that was going to be over if Harris was Gavin Newsom. All of a sudden, he's looking like if there is an election in 2028, he might be the Democratic candidate.
Yeah, and that's something I also think we should talk a little bit about. I mean, Trump is a one-term president by design because he's already served a term. Is he really going to be ready to walk away in 4 years?
Yeah.
And my question to you was, will the statute of limitations have run out on the charges that he's facing? But you pointed out that those cases are already filed, so the statute of limitations might not apply. The question is whether they can be kept alive long enough.
That's right. Statute of limitations is based on filing for civil or criminal. If you've got a filed case, but whether or not these cases will go away, will Jack Smith willingly step down, or will he be fired? Will he stick around and just wait and say, you're going to have to fire me. I'm not going to do this quietly. And then what happens to those charges? Do they get dropped? Won't get him out of his convictions. Prosecution doesn't even have the option of dropping convictions. So the convictions in New York City, and he can't pardon. If he can pardon himself, he can't pardon himself from state law. So he's going to have to rely on appellate courts or the Supreme Court to overturn those convictions.
One question I have that I think is probably one of the most fundamental things. We talk a lot about how Trump was able in his first term to really make the courts more conservative.
Yes.
Especially, I guess, the 9th District, if I'm not wrong. But my question is that, are they so far conservative now that it's going to be hard to hold Trump accountable or within the legal limits using those courts? Or do you think there's still an effective way to force good behavior?
Well, thus far, President Biden has nominated and pushed through, I think, over 200 judges federally wide, including a couple of circuit court judges, which is the appellate court level. There's a bunch more that the Democrats are probably going to jam through in the time remaining.
Yeah.
So how much, it just depends on how much the Supreme Court is willing to take on. They can only take on at most about 150 cases at once in 1 year. So my understanding is the Democrats, including the AG here, are just planning to flood it with cases. They can't kill everything.
Absolutely. And then finally, a little bit about foreign policy. I'm sure that, in the Ukraine, they're worried that all of our aid is suddenly going to disappear.
Right.
And then we were talking about NATO and Putin high-fiving his fellow...
Yeah, will Zelensky basically have to surrender Crimea and Donetsk
to get out of war?
To get out of the war,
Yeah.
and will that be just forestalling the inevitable? Will there be another invasion in a few years?
Yeah.
Who knows? And again, we have to ask the question. I don't know what's going to happen, but will there be an election in 2028? How bad can this get?
Yeah.
I mean, we really don't know, and there's a bunch of different ways this can go. And all I can say is, if you and I are rounded up for re-education camps, I get the top bunk.
Well, no matter what, we'll probably be here in 2 years and maybe even in 4. So, we got to keep covering it. And I guess the last point would be NATO. That remains unclear as to what he would do there, but he's promised to pull out, so we'll have to see where that goes.
Or make the Europeans pay more.
Yeah. But they've already raised what they're going to pay. So,
yeah,
it's been a shock. I had to talk with my kids, and my teenage daughter was really, 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 really distraught. And I had to tell her that this is just the way things go, and live local, have hope, don't give up, love each other, and I think it's really important that we don't let the anger fester.
No, absolutely. Just got to stay focused.
Yeah.
My daughter also raises, she's not really political, but she says, if a felon can be president, then they shouldn't be allowed to even ask other people for job applications, or should be forced to answer. And all felons should be allowed to vote. I mean, why the inconsistency here?
Yeah. That's a great point. I mean, if you're going to... But anyway, it happened, and so here we are. We'll be checking in, and thanks for coming in for all these different episodes, and we'll see you again probably before 2 years, but if it's 2 years, we'll see you.
Assuming we have an election, definitely.
Assuming we have an election. All right, thanks, Paul.
Thank
Eric. Yeah. That's it for this evening. Check out our podcast, Neon Galactic, if you want to expand your mind and take a whirlwind existential tour of the galactic possibilities. Thanks for joining us, and remember that all is not lost, not by a long shot. Stay tuned, stay informed.